Aaron Katersky. Looks like Jeb Bush is back in the game, baby. The Jeb train is back. He's off the deck.
Yeah, well, look, he was looking for a standout night to buoy his sagging poll numbers, and his campaign says he had a standout night. He was good. Was he good enough? He was able to mix it up with Donald Trump, especially on immigration, when he said that the Clinton campaign is doing high fives over Trump's plan to remove 11 undocumented immigrants. John Kasich jumped in there, too, and said that Trump's plan was silly, not an adult argument. And then again on Russia and its involvement in Syria trying to hit ISIS, Donald Trump said he's all for it. Let them lead. And Jeb Bush said, this isn't a board game. It's not like playing Monopoly. The U.S. has to lead. Not that we're going to be the world's policeman. And so he asserted himself in a way that maybe he struggled to in the prior debates.
It seemed like all of them started to sort of define their fault lines in a sense, and they were more willing to sort of define their differences.
McGraw, I think that's exactly right. And this was the debate where the full fractious nature of the Republican Party was brought into sharp relief, and you had the fault lines, as you say, come in, because on policy questions, this is where Rand Paul had his best debate of the campaign, and he offered a sound argument for his libertarian views. He challenged Marco Rubio's conservative credentials. Rubio made a forceful argument for increasing military spending and earned applause for talking about the U.S. military and the country being strong. And then Rand Paul shot back, how is $1 trillion expenditure conservative? Ted Cruz refused to give on taxes. He wants to dump the IRS. He wants to hold the line on bank bailouts. I mean, the hard line catnip, I think. And then there was Kasich and Bush trying to present themselves as more of the rational leaders. And in all of this policy discussion that these seasoned politicians were having, Donald Trump and Ben Carson, yes, they were center stage, but you'd hardly have known they were the front runners. They tend to fade when the debate turns into that kind of policy shouting match.
One of the interesting points for me was when John Kasich sort of went after, was it Ted Cruz on the bank bailouts, and was trying to make a point that, hey, I wouldn't bail out the rich bankers, but the depositors, we would sort of help them out. I thought that was probably the most interesting and nuanced part of the debate.
It was for sure nuanced, and it went on for a couple of minutes, the two of them back and forth, and I think Cruz trying to make the point that Kasich was no conservative, and Kasich trying to say, this is the real world here, and you can't just let people go down. And I think, again, these are the kinds of substantive differences that we haven't seen in a campaign that until now has largely been about stylistic differences.
Yeah. One point about the undercard debate, and they sort of touched on it in the varsity game, if you will, and that is, did I hear them say that they were critical of the Fed for keeping the interest rates down, and they want the Fed to raise interest rates as fast as possible because it's hurting the American worker with these low interest rates? Was that their argument?
If it was, I didn't quite hear it necessarily that way, but the Fed is a popular target.
Right.
Whether it's a realistic target is a whole other matter. But that's part of these what some of the candidates believe, I think.
Yeah, and George Pataki nowhere to be found, and Lindsey Graham were not invited to the dance at all. They weren't even invited to dinner.
Not even to the undercard debate, Jim Gilmore either, and so there were 4 Republicans on the stage, and Chris Christie tried to, I think, make the most of it. He refused to engage with his rivals, which was a rarity for Christie. He seemed to want to portray himself as belonging on the main stage with the big boys, and he took on Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, and so now this is the last debate. I guess 5 weeks between now and the next debate. Lots of people thinking that there'll be some shaking out of some of the lesser funded candidates.
Well, for the only reason though that why I can't understand at this point why somebody like Christie or Bush or any of them, aside from money, would get out, because the debates is where they've been able to alter the trajectory of the race. Money hasn't mattered as much. TV ads, all that kind of, hasn't made much of a difference. So there's no reason for these candidates to get out. And for Carson and Trump, they may not have had a standout performance, but if they did no harm, they should be able to maintain their lead in the polls.
Aaron Katersky live in Milwaukee covering the GOP debate from last night. Aaron, thanks for checking in.
Thanks, McGraw.
6:57 KTRS.
Hi, this is Jeff Lapidus,